Here with Mike with more writing tips.
I'm a writer, and every writer I know likes to read. If you're a writer, you have to read. My favorite genre is crime fiction, and the reason I'm writing today is because when I was a child growing up in Mitchell, South Dakota, I stopped into a cigar store where they had a spinner rack of paperbacks, and I bought The Deep Blue Goodbye by John D McDonald. It was the first Travis McGee adventure. And as I stood on the sidewalk looking at the book, which cost 35 cents, I had a revelation that John D McDonald wasn't doing this as a hobby. He was doing this for a living. And I decided that's what I wanted to do. John D McDonald, Freddie loves to help. John D. McDonald was one of the greatest pulp writers in American history and a great writer of fiction. And while many of you may not have heard of him, I'm sure you've heard of one of his works, Cape Fear, which has been made into a movie twice. The first time in the 50s, starring Robert Mitchum and Gregory Peck. And the second time in the 80s, starring those same guys, but with Robert De Niro as the bad guy and Nick Nolte as the good guy. It's memorable stuff. And I'm not the only crime fiction writer that was inspired by John D. McDonald. One of my favorite crime writers, Randy Wayne White, writes about the time he and a friend, when they were in their teens, approached John D. McDonald's house on the eastern coast of Florida by boat, and they got off on his lawn, and there he was, and they said, "We hate to bother you, Mr. McDonald, but we're big fans of yours." And he said, "Well, come on in, boys, let's talk." And they were lucky enough to meet the great man in person and be inspired by his writing. Some of my other favorite crime writers are Raymond Chandler, whom we all know is the creator of Philip Marlowe, Dashiell Hammett, who wrote The Maltese Falcon and created Sam Spade, Robert Cray, a modern crime writer who's very good. And these are the type of books that I enjoy. I enjoy many types of books. I also read fantasy and science fiction, autobiographical tomes and history books. But for pleasure, I usually gravitate towards this type of crime novel. And it was because of that this is the type of fiction I love that I created my character Josh Pratt, who's the hero of the Biker series. Josh Pratt is a reformed motorcycle hoodlum who went to prison and found God. And when he came out, he tried to turn his life around. The stories are grim. I'm working on the 10th Josh Pratt novel now. The very first Josh Pratt novel was published by Airship 27. And I like to think that I'm improving every time I sit down to write, and there are signs of that. This book has been very positively reviewed and received, and I'm grateful for that, but each subsequent book has been better. I then moved on to Liberty Island Press, which decided to try their hand at fiction, and the books looked like this. Well, this is my own fault because I hired a friend to do these illustrations, which are comic book-like. And I don't blame the lack of sales on the illustration, but Liberty Island had no clue what they were doing, and they finally stopped publishing fiction. But by then, I had moved on to Wolfpack, which is one of the 5 fastest growing publishers in the United States. And now the books look like this. They all have the same cover with a different color tint. They save money that way. But the books are better. In fact, this book, Con, is my latest. And it's about the Tiger King. Not specifically the Tiger King, but it's about an animal sanctuary that incurs the wrath of the state by mistreating their animals. And an animal rights group hires Josh to accompany them to the animal sanctuary to rescue the animals and make sure they're not attacked by these crazy people who run the sanctuary. But it's really about a Siberian tiger named Genghis Khan. And one of the women who worked at the sanctuary, who loves the tiger, who decides she's going to rescue Genghis Khan herself. So before the police arrive, she takes off with Genghis Khan in the back of a van. And the story concerns her efforts to deliver Genghis Khan to sanctuary. And that sanctuary is in Alaska. People don't know this, but there are Siberian tigers in Alaska. And if you don't believe me, go search for it on a search engine. There are photographs. They swim across the Bering Strait. The one I'm working on now is called Seventh Son. And it's about a feud between two families that dates back to the Civil War. I've had to put that on pause while I work on other projects, but I'm going to get back to it soon. So if you like this type of crime fiction, or if you're a biker, because I don't think there's ever been a series about a biker detective before, check out Biker and all the other biker novels. They're on Amazon. If you go to Amazon, you type in Mike Barron, you'll get 22 pages of my stuff. Thank you for listening.
All right, very good. And we have Thin Blue Line is being mailed or has been mailed, right?
Yeah, people are getting their copies now, only a handful left.
Very good. And I think there might be some still getting mailed out, so we appreciate everyone's patience. Also, mail time is not going very fast, so just contact through the Indiegogo Kickstarter if you have questions on that. And Chris Braley, who's our crowdfunding organizer, is very good at communicating. So, any other thoughts for today?
Always take a hat.
Yes, always take a hat. We're going to zoom out a little bit for these are the dogs, Freddie and Mac. Sounds like a mortgage company. Freddie, Mac. So Mac's on the right, and Freddie's the little golden-haired puppy, who, yes, is very loved by all of us. All right, well, we're going to end this, and we appreciate everyone listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, and we'll have more videos coming up in the future. Thanks so much.